Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Big and Tiny podcast. Have Vicky here, have myself here. We're ready to go. Any updates on yourself before we get going?
Do you know what I find really funny? The fact that we're still calling this a podcast when actually it's a video.
What do you mean? Oh, it's not live.
No, I know it's not live, but we don't upload it to like Apple Podcasts or iTunes or anything like that. Podcasts these days aren't podcasts, they're YouTube videos.
Yeah, well, people want the visual aspect, but I mean, like, I don't know. Do you? I think you have to pay to be on iTunes.
Nah,
I don't know. That's what I've heard. I haven't looked into it. I haven't done my research.
haven't done the research.
I also
Talking,
don't. I don't have Spotify. I'm one of those freaks.
right, okay, I get you. No, it was just something that actually Oliver brought to my attention the other day, and he was like, "It's not really a podcast, is it? Because it's a video. People are just watching you sit in a room talk." I was like, That's a
Yeah,
fair
but
enough point."
people watch other people play video games. It's a glorious time to exist.
I know it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just something that I wanted to bring up, so I thought it was funny.
Well, anyway, yeah, I'm currently sat at what, 8.5 weeks out? Is it?
A half weeks out, yes, everything is going beautifully and swimmingly well, regardless of the haters that are sliding into my DMs and yet still stalk my stories,
I've got
saying,
no haters, but I've got plenty of people just watching and not saying anything.
I know it's interesting, isn't it? It is interesting.
It's funny. I was chatting to
Just for
Niall. I was chatting to Niall, and he was like, "Those will be the first people that like are licking your bumhole when you win or when you do well." And I was
yeah,
like, "Maybe."
And for the people who obviously haven't followed us from the very, very beginning, obviously me and Alex have been together for a long time in terms of coach-client relationships, etc., etc. And when we were prepping Alex for his very first show, my methods are a little bit kind of like what unorthodox, left-wing, not the usual kind of shit because I treat the human body. I don't just treat prep. And everybody was saying, Alex is going to do poorly. He's not going to get his IFBB Pro card. You're going to be the detriment of him. He's not going to make weight. And I was just like, do you know what? Just leave me to it and let's just wait and see. And we basically crushed everybody, didn't we? Which was amazing.
Well, they
Um,
turn around and they're like, "How are you doing that?" And they're like, understanding the human body and actually having some ability in terms of, a medical background, like not just being like, "You're not using thyroid drugs to take weight off," or "You're not taking 120 micrograms of Clen," or "You're not using Tren," or,
no, no, right?
it's like all you know is a process, mate. You don't actually know why you use these things or what they do or why you don't use certain things. So,
This is it. So it was
mm.
very interesting. And then obviously this time around, we've approached your dieting phase just a little bit differently. We put you through more of a deficit, obviously getting you into a good stage condition in order to put your prep a lot nicer. So we put you through a dieting phase for 10
A
weeks.
pre-prep diet.
A pre-prep diet. I don't like calling it a pre-prep diet.
I
I just
know,
basically
but that's what the term is in the
but,
in
we
this.
don't do things like that. It's fucking shit. So we tidied you up for realistically about 10 weeks, getting your body into a really nice position. Didn't use any fat burners, didn't use any lipolytics, just use a good old-fashioned calorie deficit and increased your expenditure a little bit. Got you into a nice position, brought you out of the hole for a good 4-week diet break, and then we have set you up on a nice prep. Now, what has been good is that we have been using a different method in terms of bringing you down and then pushing you back up to keep your metabolism firing, which has worked astronomically beautifully
Yeah,
so far.
high
And we're still
tomatoes.
8.5 weeks out. And how far are you off your cap at the moment?
Oh, this morning I've been as low as 90, so yeah, 97.3. But this
Cool.
morning, after high day yesterday, I got high day today. I was 97.7. So let's just say
Yes,
that because
it's
obviously it's a much fuller look, which tomorrow morning I'll be like, oh, fuck.
and that's what's so good about it because even when you get into your head and you're like, I am so flat on a Saturday because we have two check-ins a
I
week.
was like, yeah, this is what I need. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
that's good. I was just
exactly.
surprised at 2 kilos off in 3 days. That was
Yeah,
like,
well, that's the whoosh effect. That is
yeah.
the whoosh effect. Everybody goes through a whoosh. So Saturdays, you're like, oh my God, I'm so flat. And then when you come to check in on Wednesday, you're like, okay, so this is interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's how you should be looking on stage. It's useful to see it, isn't it? And the fact that you can fill up on not having to use loads of food
You
and
don't need
cause loads of stomach problems and all this sort of stuff, then it's very useful. So
But
yeah,
this is how we
it's
understand
funny
the
though, isn't it? How you still people are still there like, oh, you'll never get people doing that, and then I'm getting the leanest I've ever been, and then they start copying it, and you're
and
there like,
funny bit. But
okay.
but you see what
But
is
it's
funny
not
about
anything
it.
new. I can't sit here and be like, you've done this directly because of me. It's just a big coincidence, isn't it?
It is a big coincidence. But what is hilarious about it is that people are stalking, people are looking, people are kind of like having that little bit of a judgmental thing. And then people are trying to implement what we are doing, but without understanding the context.
Mm.
Because when we run your low days followed by high days, we are doing that specifically for how your body is responding to it. Now, your high low days, low high days, whatever it is that how you want to put it in terms of that rotation, that wouldn't work for everybody. It wouldn't work for me per se, because 5 days low would be not long enough for me to get into the aspect of needing that particular replenishment.
Yeah.
Whereas I know for you, 5 days is going to be enough with that amount of expenditure and then giving you 2 high days. Now, as we go deeper into prep, we may have to obviously put you onto like a 6-2, or we may have to push it back and put you onto a 3-1. So pushing the deficit for 3 days and then increasing it by one. We all don't understand, it doesn't really matter, but it is based on your response. But what I am seeing is people who are going, oh, I'm having a consecutive low day and then I'm having a real big refeed before legs. And it's like, but why is it always before leg day? Why does it have to be before
Hold
leg
your
day?
legs, bro.
But it's what happens if your shoulders are a little bit more of a week apart? What happens if your back is a little bit more of a week apart? What happens if, like, I see this quite a lot with wellness clients, where they're basically having like leg days, and then when they do their upper training day, they have lower food on an upper training day, because they want to put more carbs into the aspect that they're working. But the thing is, if you think about it, most wellness athletes, if they train, say, 4 leg days and one upper day, right,
Yeah.
the volume on their leg days is going to be a lot lower. Even though the intensity may be high, the volume is going to be
You're
lower
chucking a shitload of upper body work in one day.
in one day. And I'm not being funny, I fucking love training upper body. So if I get the opportunity to train upper body, I'm going to fucking send it. So
Yeah.
I'm going to use a lot of intensity, a lot of volume, and then why should I actually decrease my amount of food that I'm taking in that day? It makes literal no sense. No sense at all. So these high, medium, and low days for wellness clients in their off season, I just find fucking stupid. It's like, that wellness athlete is going to go ham on that day
If
because
you
they
want,
don't train it that often.
if you wanted to hold the muscle, you wouldn't train on the day you have the high day because you need to refill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's funny, isn't it? It's like, no, I need to use the food to train my legs. It's like, so you're gonna put more food in to deplete yourself on the same day. Like, think of
Makes
what you need to use it for. But
yeah.
again, this is just people having a certain perspective on how they think should be. Whatever. You have to see when the result happens and what occurs from that front of things. You don't want to jump the gun on these things, but I'm feeling pretty confident.
It's nice. It's understanding metabolism, and I'm not boasting my own trumpet or saying like I fucking know everything, because I don't. But I do understand the human metabolism and how to manipulate things, which is the reason why I can get people's thyroids functioning back so quickly and so well.
I mean, in you even saying that you don't know everything is a lot more telling than what some of these top coaches do, because they will never say that they don't know everything.
You know,
They do fucking seminars on how they know everything. Charge a lot of money for it too, and you're there like, okay, you know.
And to be fair, I am in a very, very privileged position because I know a lot of people around the world who are in the medical fields, as well as obviously human kinetics and human metabolism, and doing all these studies, as well as some of the most intelligent people that I've ever seen in terms of, bodybuilding and that kind of stuff as well. So if I don't know something and I have a little bit of a head scratcher, I will literally just say to my client, you know what? I don't know that. Is it okay if I pass this over by one of my colleagues? And between me and like 7 other people, we're going to come to some kind of idea as to what is actually going on. So, there is
That's
nothing
like,
wrong with saying that you do not know everything,
yeah,
but
and that's
it's
the
more.
scientific basis of study. It's not as if scientists don't talk to each other. There's plenty of think tanks, and people compare papers all the time. That's why it's called peer review. The difference
Mm,
in our industry is it's protected protocols, but everybody does the same fucking thing.
I know, yeah, it's silly.
It's like,
Protecting
right,
you.
if you were, it's just a case of not learning, isn't it? It's like, oh well, I've got my protocol and you can't know it. It's secret. It's like I know exactly what you do because you do the same thing with every single client.
Yeah, and they
Until
look
you
all the
start doing different stuff and learning stuff again, it's going to be pretty obvious what you do. So
same.
there's no need to act like a knobhead and be like, oh, but I know how to ping people properly, and then they look worn out, wet, and fucking not full, and you're there like, okay, it
I
works on
think,
an amateur stage, but it doesn't. It really doesn't work on a pro stage.
no, I think it's the worn out look that I've seen quite a lot actually. Last year especially, I've seen a lot of tired physiques. Like even in
Pushing
their
the rep cards
first,
all the time.
yeah, but it's just its first show. Like, when they say that they use it as like a warm-up show, I think that's really silly anyway. But when they use a warm-up show and they're already looking tired, and you can see it in their physique. They look stringy, and you can see the fatigue, and then they fail to fill up because of the fact that they're carrying too much fatigue. And there's just so much going on. And it's just because they've been plowed into the ground, and been on thyroid meds from day one, been on cleanse from day one, and they're pushing everything up and then dragging everything down. And you can't just keep on pushing and pulling. You just can't do that. You have, as in like pushing cardio and pulling food, you have to be able to have these highs, lows, pullbacks, stops, maintain for a bit, have that solidification aspect,
And
like what your
spending plenty
diet
of
was.
time without using drugs.
Yeah, and don't use any fucking drugs, so, but it is by the by, it'll be interesting to see this year and what kind of people come up with, especially first timers and stuff. So I'm quite interested to see the new faces come up this
I
year.
mean, it's always the case, isn't it? With this, you get used to the same old faces all the time, so it's nice to see
Mm,
people are actually coming through, and there's some new talent, which
mm,
there certainly was last year. There was plenty of that,
mm,
so I'm pretty sure there'll be more coming through this year. And there's always, that's part of the reason we do the podcast is to try and, teach people that want to, in the future compete as well as people who are current competitors. You want to try and put information out there that's actually going to be beneficial rather than the usual, oh, well, you just do this because you
mm.
do.
Yeah, exactly. It's the done thing.
Mm.
But yeah, and not understanding side effects, not just not understanding side effects of drugs, but actually understanding side effects of dieting. People, because there are going to be natural competitors out there, of course. I coach a lot of natural competitors, so do you. And everything has a side effect. Dieting has a side effect, and people don't understand that it does and how to treat it, and how to mitigate some of those side effects as well. There's lots of things that we can talk about realistically that have just kind of come to our mind. But we are going to be talking about this beautiful study that has been doing the rounds for approximately 3 years now, but is now started to rear its ugly head again in relation to absorption of protein in a single meal sitting.
Mm.
So off you go, you explain it.
Well, it's such a fucking clickbait article as well. Protein synthesis increased 40% over. So the base level was 30 grams of protein a meal. And then when someone had 100 grams of protein a meal, their protein synthesis increased by 40%.
Mm,
Okay, you've increased the protein amount by 300%.
mm,
So realistically, that's not an equitable amount. Additionally, that's in one meal. I'm not sure if they did the meal fasted to begin with. So, yes, you can put all of your protein allowance in one day and your body will absorb that protein. Well done. What else is it going to do in terms of your digestion? This is the problem when they have studies like this. It's a bit like the early testosterone studies where it was like, oh, well, you took 500 milligrams testosterone and these guys gained the most muscle. There's no mention of side effects. There's no
no.
mention of problems with any of this sort of stuff. And obviously, one meal, you might end up feeling a bit full after one meal. But when a bodybuilder goes, oh, so I can have 100 grams of protein per meal, do that for 4 days and see if you actually manage to have a shit. Like, it's one of those, it's just silly. It's like, it's confirmation bias. And the
Mm,
people that repost this thing are all the same people that don't want, like, the scientific basis of exercise or any of this other stuff to be real. They don't
mm,
want to do an incline bicep curl, lying back on a bench. They just want to do the bro stuff. They just want to pick up heavy weight and eat as much as possible. And if you ever question one of them about it, about this study, they'll just go, "Oh, I've been doing it that way the whole time, and I've got really big." You're like, yeah, and there's a lot of other consequences to that as well. You're not the most aesthetic person anymore. It's one of those
mm.
where how much gut overgrowth have you got? Like, do you even know what that is? No. How bad is your distension? Like you say, you feel fine, but I can see your stomach through your t-shirt before I see your chest. Like,
Mm.
come on. And like, I was like, you can't pull a vacuum. Oh, don't need one anywhere to open. Samson can pull a vacuum. Oh, but he's a
Mm.
freak. Do you not want to try and compare to get there? What are you doing this for? Are you just fucking around? Like, do you not want to be the best bodybuilder you can be? Or are you just happy to be a lazy fat bitch? Like, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you're gonna be like that and you're just gonna get by, and it's like, so you're slamming a shitload of gear, you're spending loads of money on food, and you're just gonna what? Just like waddle around on stage a bit and then be like, get like your third place or whatever it is from the fact you've got a shitload of muscle, but distended stomach and probably can't get a condition because of said distended stomach.
Mm.
And then what? Waddle home and be like, yeah, cool. I'll do the same again next year.
Mm.
You're not
I
looking for
think once you've
solutions. You're
got
just looking to fuel an ego or fuel this thing that you don't know how to get out of.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was this whole big thing about, high protein, low protein, et cetera, et cetera. But all of these studies, and it still stands, even with this study, in terms of like a single entity or a single meal feeding, every single study is saying you will not have any further growth at 1.6 grams per pound of body weight in terms of 3 grams per pound of body weight. If you are dieting, then yes, you can use some more protein, especially if you are a natural bodybuilder and that kind of stuff as well, especially in a deficit, like I just said. But when people are saying, you can't absorb more than 30 grams protein in one sitting, well, that's bullshit. And we know that that's bullshit. And it's been bullshit for the last 25 fucking years
Yeah.
and probably more so
It's
than that.
comparing two stupid studies.
Exactly. But when people are saying, oh, look at this, you're maximizing MPS. Well, yes, but you're having a bigger bolus dose of protein anyway. It's also going to take longer to digest because you're not just going to eat 100 grams of protein on its own. You're going to have it as a combination based meal. So it's still going to take longer to digest, which is obviously keeping the MPS elevated. Now, are you going to allow that refractory period to come down where the leucine threshold, where it spikes MPS for muscle building purposes? Are you going to allow that refractory to come down within about 4 to 5 hours? Probably not, because being a bro and eating 6 or 7 meals a day, you're going to eat every 2 to 2.5 hours. So you're basically piling more food on top of more food and not allowing the digestive system to fully clear out. Now, because you have not allowed that clearance phase, you are stalling what's known as the MMC, or the migrating motor complex, which is a very scientific way of explaining the fact that you've got little men who almost work on a railway, and they sit in your bowel and your gut and your intestines, and every so often when your bowel is clear, they go in with their shovels and they get rid of all of the debris and the shit, okay, like little railway milkers. They can only do that, and the migrating motor complex only works when your intestinal tract is clear. Now, if you keep on shoving food down your throat every 2.5 to 3 hours, it takes approximately 5 hours for your stomach and your small intestine to head into the bowel to be completely clear. So you're not allowing that digestive process to actually work, which means you're going to get more fermentation, more bacterial overgrowth, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then more food and more protein because getting big, bro. But it doesn't work like that. Okay, your system, this is all we're talking about human metabolism. You have to have things specifically done and properly. Do you require 100 grams of protein per meal that you have? Absolutely fucking not. Nobody does. If you wanted to put all of that protein towards muscle building, do you honestly think that your body is going to do that? It's going to kind of go, oh, he's a bodybuilder. He's having 100 grams of protein. I'm going to put all of that into the muscle building process. No, it doesn't do that. Protein is also extremely important for every single living organ cell in your body. So it's going to help with nails, skin, hair, eye health, all of these kind of things. But if you overload it, especially all in one go, you will feel distended, your MMC will stop working, your digestive tract will get blown out, and you will suffer the consequences of poor digestion. It is the basis of human metabolism.
Mm.
So, anybody can do this. Research MMC, migrating
Just
motor
read a
complex.
fucking book.
It's not very difficult to understand. I mean, I did break it down in terms of layman terms, but if you stop the MMC from happening, you are going to have a bloated, distended stomach. And it is going to carry on happening because you're not allowing it to clear. So when as an example, I've got some heavy endurance guys, some CrossFitters and that kind of thing. They have to eat a lot of food because they train so much. They train 2, 3 times a day because they are the elitist. But on their rest days, I will really bring their food right the way down because I'm
Great.
literally making them do fuck all just to give their digestive system a break. and it allows them to bring it down. Sometimes I'll get them to do, an intermittent fast, which is only I'm doing for men, by the way. I don't get women to intermittent fast. It's really stupid. And that's another subject for another day. But I will get them to intermittent fast because sometimes they'll say to me, "Do you know what, Vic? I cannot eat another fucking damn thing." But this is all about training the gut at the same time.
Yeah, you got
So
to
we'll
push
have
it.
yeah, we've got to do it very, very slowly, but we have to allow that gut to have a little bit of a rest from digesting all of the food. So rather than eating and drinking a lot of their calories, which is what they have to do on a rest day, we'll just give them like 2 meals.
Yeah.
Feel absolutely fine with it. They'll be thankful of the break. Their bowels will work absolutely fine. They won't, feel kind of sluggish on a rest day. Whereas if they just followed their training routine, and then still had a lot of food on a rest day because recovery, if you're not doing fuck all, because we don't do active recovery days in terms of CrossFit, we fucking
Too much
sit.
activity in the first place.
Yeah, we fucking sit down and we sit still. But you only need like 2 or 3 meals just to kind of keep you topped up just that little bit, full of nutrient dense foods. Um, so yeah, sorry, that was kind of like a big tangent
It
in
was.
terms of protein. But
I
you can
think,
have as much protein as you fucking want,
yeah.
all day if you wanted to. But are you going to suffer the consequences from it? Yeah, absolutely you are.
I think a lot of, from a few guys I've spoken to, when they've swapped to a very high protein diet, what they've actually done is swap away from eating a load of ultra processed food. So they've gone to obviously like meat and rice, oats and whey, and that's about it. Like there are variations upon that theme. Whereas before, they may have been slamming like 200, 300 grams of cereal, pre and post, and then squares bars and all this sort of shit. And I've started reading ultra processed people, which is not massively scientific, but it's very interesting.
It is
And
interesting.
the so in terms of processed food, people obviously go, "Oh, it's just food." Like so people say, "Oh, cereal's a fast-acting carb." Once you look into the ingredients, what is actually in your cereal, what you might expect is like wheat and husk and this sort of stuff. It's all the shit that is reconstituted starch or another form of fat which has been manipulated to taste a certain way, to make the food feel a certain way, and to look a certain way. And
Mm.
that's the shit which fucks you up.
It is.
It's the way that's made and what's put in your food to make it cheaper. That's the
Yeah.
only thing they care about in terms of nutrition. It just makes the food cheaper, and you pay out the arse for a box of Cocoa Pops because they're not cheap, are they? But for
No.
them, the unit cost is cheaper, and that's all they care about is bottom line. So if they can make it taste a certain way, it's not going to be completely toxic upon entering your system, and it can sell, and then you will take it, and that's the thing. A load of products these days are full of processing. The most interesting one, which is the case the guy presents, is how they made margarine in Germany in World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they'd run out of butter, they run out of fat sources in the country. So they were like, what can we do? And they had a load of low density coal. And from that comes paraffin. And you can manipulate paraffin to make it into a fat. And that
Mhm.
became the new butter. And funnily enough, they only gave it to guys with very short life expectancies because of all the reports of horrendous bloating. So they'd give it to guys on submarines because it kept for ages and it tasted all right, but they weren't expected to last 60 days by the end of the war. So
Well, what's really funny about margarine in terms of like the initial aspects of margarine, I don't know if you've actually got to this part in terms of the study or anything like that, but there was a big study done in terms of margarine. They opened up a tub of margarine, put it in a dusty garage, and left it for 3 months
no
open,
mold, no
right?
mold.
No mold, never
Yeah.
went off. And you know what? Not a single spider, fly, flea, or fucking
No
insect
bugs.
near it.
Uh,
Didn't
that's
go
not a
near
good
it.
sign.
It's not a good sign.
If the
And you
animal
can
goes,
tell.
that's not going to be good for me. Why the fuck are you eating it?
Exactly. And you can test this for yourself. You can do it because people will go, "Oh, I found mold on my margarine." No, you haven't. You found the mold from the little bits of the bread crusts that you have put your knife back into it. That's where the mold has grown. It's not the actual margarine itself. And if you compare it, margarine, the original basis of margarine, is only one molecule different than plastic.
Mm,
And people are eating this shit on toast.
honestly, it's nuts. And it was devised by Napoleon the Third, one of those guys, basically after Napoleon, a few years after 1800s, basically, and they basically had run out of butter, and they
Yeah.
needed to find ways to make more butter because you've got to feed the poor people.
Hmm.
And they invented margarine, and there were plenty of outcries in the scientific community at the time, going, "What the fuck have you done to butter?" Going, "If you
Hmm.
do this, it will create serious problems when it comes to consumption," and it did, but
Oh,
it was cheap.
fine.
It was cheap and available. So it
Yeah.
gets so this is why we have a massive problem with there's a huge link between obesity and poverty because it's super duper cheap to make all this stuff. And it's the poor people that end up buying it because they can't afford the food that is more expensive and is actually whole. It's a
Hmm.
real food, which is amazing because the stat is what 80 was it 60 or 80% of the normal diet in the US and the UK is ultra processed food.
Oh
There's
God, 80%.
80%, yeah. The majority of people do not eat what you would consider to be single ingredient real food.
No.
Um, Granted, there's processing in lots of things. Like yogurt is processed because it has to be heated. Milk has to be pasteurized, otherwise it's not good for you. So there's lots of different processing things, but it's the actual generation of an entirely new molecule to replicate another thing. So ice cream, for instance, the majority of ice creams have a very, very, very small amount of milk in it or cream.
Mm, mm.
It's actually seed oils, isn't it? Instead of that they use that fat instead of the fat from butter or cream. And
Yes.
at the minute, because of the war in the Ukraine, where a lot of seed oils come from, it's becoming very expensive. So they're looking to alternatives, and a really cheap alternative is chicken fat. So
Mm.
soon you might see chicken fat in your ice cream.
Delightful.
And it's
Delightful.
and it'll just be reconstituted to taste like ice cream should taste, feel, all this sort of stuff, all these different aspects. So,
Mm.
and I
Now,
haven't even got to the
what else
part where
is
they've
really,
employed the cigarette guys to make it more expensive, but more
yeah,
addictive.
exactly. Now, what else is really interesting is if you compare men's testosterone levels from today to 1978, it has plummeted,
Yeah.
absolutely plummeted. Now, there's a lot of things that are going around in terms of conspiracy theories and this and that and the other and blah, 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 and all that kind of crap. But in terms of testosterone levels, I think the new norm now in terms of nanomole is around about for a male is what was it now? Was it 200 that is like the norm in terms of nanomoles? Sorry. My apologies.
Okay.
I'm actually thinking in relation to
Americans unit,
the
that is.
Americans. Yeah. So yeah. So
200.
in American terminology, it's 300, right?
Yeah.
But back in 1978, when they did the average, you can just do this in terms of comparison rather than UK numbers and blah blah. And back in there, when it was the average, it was 1500.
Fucking hell, that's huge.
It's massive.
What age
And
range was surveyed at that point? Because if you're going for younger guys, it's going to be huge.
it
But
was it's the same age range and it's the complete data collection. And that if you think about it, right, the decline in natural testosterone levels in men between 78 and now 2025, it's not that long.
no,
It
50
is
years.
a longer time
And
period.
that's a
You would
huge
imagine something
difference.
like that to be happening over like 150 years, but it's not. It's happened, in less than 50.
Yeah.
Less than 50 years, and we have declined by that much. The causes of or the amount of fertility and infertile people now who are sterile, not just in terms of men, but in terms of females as well, have almost quadrupled over that time period. We are seeing more autoimmune diseases kind of crop up. How many women and how many guys do you see who come to you usually in terms of your coaching who are already taking levothyroxine from their doctors?
You and they need it, or they've decided
Yes.
to come off it because they don't think they need it, but they actually do. I see plenty of guys who have got very low testosterone levels naturally, and they
Mm,
look unwell, and
mm.
for whatever reason it is. But let's be honest, the thing which has changed the most in terms of our landscape of what goes into our body is our food.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all environmental. It's environmental. It's the fact that we are eating seed oils. Seed oils are detrimental to thyroid health, which of course your thyroid is your master metabolic regulator. So if that goes down, everything else goes down. Ultra processed foods are detrimental to testosterone. So that is the reason why we've had that decline. Obviously, things are getting more and more expensive. Kids are getting grown up. Kids are getting raised, sorry, dragged up. They're getting raised on things like chicken nuggets and chips and all of that kind of malarkey. And because of that, hormonal health is going down the pan. People don't want to cook anymore. People want to get meal prep stuff.
People don't know
Meal
how
prep.
to cook.
No, they don't. They don't. I mean, I thought it was really odd because I'm an old fart anyway, but in school we were taught how to cook. We were taught how to make fucking bread and all
I
different
wasn't.
types of breads.
This is the difference. We had like a home economics class when I was in junior school, so pre 11 years old, pre seniors, pre high school. After that, none. It's not part of
Yeah.
the curriculum. You don't learn about nutrition and biology. Honestly, it needs to be a mandatory topic at this point because yeah, it needs to be combined with also cooking. You need nutrition alongside cooking because obviously you need the application to actually be able to feed yourself and the reasons why you should be doing certain things, as well as how to make really nice food. Because
Mm.
this is the reason why people just buy it because they can't make it themselves and it takes too long and we all have far too busy lives. It's a bunch of bollocks. You sit in front of the TV for 6 hours when you get home.
Yeah.
It's one of those like it's a real concern after reading all this, and it's like if you are eating as a bodybuilder, let's relate it back to the topic. If you are eating three fucking 600 grams of Cocoa Pops a day, the amount of
Mm.
distension you're going to get from that and the possibilities as a result of that are long term incredibly bad for you. Additionally, short term, you're probably not going to be able to get as lean as easily,
Mm.
purely from the aspect of your stomach isn't happy. You might say, "Oh, but it's a fast acting carb. I don't even feel like I've eaten it." That's the point. That's
Mm.
why they've made it like that. It doesn't feel like I've eaten it. Yet because
Mm.
one, if it feels like you've not eaten anything, it's because the nutritional content of it is so shit. Your body hasn't taken anything in. It's just
Yeah.
fat. It's just taking it in and gone, that was yummy. Give me more of that because I don't feel full. There's nothing in it which your body is gonna. That's the whole purpose of the chemicals which they've put in it is to bypass the leptin and ghrelin and
Mm.
just
And you
get you to
have that
keep eating.
and you do have that inflammatory response. Now you will be watery and you will look inflamed. Now, over the last, like say last 3 months, and I've set up like 10 people, right? Set up 10 new clients. I think over those last 10 people, I have included cereal in one person's meal plan. Just one. Now, the reason why, because I'm not a fan of adding in cereal and that kind of thing as well, the reason why I have added cereal into that one person's meal plan is because he suffers with a bowel disorder that has Crohn's. We have to keep his fiber very, very low.
Yeah, can't use oats.
Can't use oats. We can't use oats. I'm not going to be using cream of rice all the fucking time because he actually bloats on cream of rice. So I'm not going to be using that. The poor guy can't obviously have a lot of potatoes again because of high fibrous elements. So, we have to be using something that is slightly different. So he does have that, but I do stipulate that it's not going to be something like Frosties or Cocoa Pops or anything like that. It does have to be a whole earth-based natural source. It's rice puffs. It's puffed fucking rice.
Mm.
So it is still rice, but it is a cereal base, and then obviously we use different derivatives. But I'm just going to give you like a little bit of an example. And this is the reason why people have a go at me all the time in terms of saying like, oh, whole foods and that kind of thing. I don't want people being afraid of different types of food, but I'm just going to give a bit of an example in terms of what I've done with one of my CrossFit guys, okay, which is still going to be a whole-based food, but pre-workout oats, whey based on the complex blend, gluten-free sourdough bought from the bakery, so it's none like full of this kind of shit.
No
Maple
processing at
syrup.
all apart from making it. There's nothing additional to prolong its life.
Exactly. Maple syrup and OJ. And then post workout, chicken, jasmine rice, coconut oil to cook your chicken in, and raw honey. I stipulate raw honey.
Mm.
Meal number 3, chicken, baby new or miniature potatoes with green beans and a banana. Don't knock it till you try it. A pre-workout top-up Greek yogurt, fruit-only jam with some dark chocolate, over 85% for vasodilation purposes and for the polyphenols. Post-workout meal, beef or lean steak, spinach, avocado, and an uncut waste jasmine rice. And then obviously he's got his potassium, his electrolytes, and his sodium all put in there. That is literally just an example of somebody who I am feeding 70 grams of fat, 465 grams of carbs, and 180 grams of protein. And this guy trained 2 days, kilos and he weighs 80 kilos.
Yeah.
So, that's just a little bit of an example of how I would obviously split something out for somebody specifically, but there is no shit in there, but he still does have a lot of decent food and they're wholesome and they are nutritious and he's got no problems in terms of his gut at the end of the day. So, and I see lots of other, well, who did we see the other day?
I think
I can't
the other
remember.
thing here is as well, people think they need to be eating like 900 grams of carbs in order to gain muscle. If you're eating
No,
highly nutritious food, you don't need to eat a lot of it because you'll be satiated by it for one, and your body will actually absorb a good amount of micronutrients, not
mm,
just protein, carb, and fat. It's not just about that. You've got to consider
no,
every single little aspect of the actual food that you're taking in. And this is where when people say bodybuilding's simple, I fucking hate this phrase because
mm,
your opinion is that it's simple. That doesn't mean it
mm,
is. There's so much to nutrition, to training, to drugs that you couldn't even explain how testosterone works. And you're there like bodybuilding's really simple. You just lift weights and you eat more food. All right, what about
mm,
the people that get put on 300 grams of protein when they weigh 60 kilos and they end up with the worst distension in the world and they can't gain any fucking muscle? They're falling asleep at their desks because they're so fucking stuffed all the time. You're going to call it
mm.
simple then? That's just insulting.
But it is insulting, but it's because people aren't, again, just bringing it back to the very, very first thing that we just brought it up. People don't understand the human metabolism. They just understand X, Y, and Z, right? Food, training, drugs. That's all they understand. And realistically, they don't understand the drug element that much either. Hence the reason why you see people who are running like a gram or a gram and a half of test. And it's a constant argument that I have with a lot of people when they go, why do you use such a low test base? It's like, because we might as well just have your test base to the point where you're not going to aromatize, you're not going to have any element in terms of bringing in an AI, because you still need a basis of estrogen. You tell me a bodybuilder who has crashed their estrogen and told me that they felt good, because they fucking don't.
But they
You
don't
feel
know they
fucking
have
shit
because they
on
just think they need to be taking the AIs alongside with their grammar test.
Exactly, but
Uh,
don't take a gram of test. You can always start low and then bring yourself up high, and then just manage yourself. You can always test, don't guess. That's what you should always bloody do at the end of the day. But there's always a constant argument in relation to low test versus high test and how that should go. But I would quite honestly prefer to use a lower test base so we have room for an additional drug that we bring in. You can't realistically just run a test only cycle. You can if you're a very first entry into something, but at some point you're going to have to bring in a different kind of a different pathway.
I
You're
think
going to have to
the
bring
way
in a drug.
the easiest way to compare it for bros is a bit like you take a car. If you're just trying to make the engine bigger and bigger and bigger every time to make it go faster, you're going to end up with your 16 valve, 25-liter plane engine sat in your car. It doesn't actually go that quick, so the displacement on it is awful. You can't get enough
Mm,
pressure through it, and you certainly can't get traction. That's your testosterone. When you've got a four-cylinder twin turbo Ferrari that destroys that in all aspects of straight line speed, acceleration, and handling, that's going to be the better option in terms of stripping back the weight and actually utilizing all aspects of what you can in terms of what makes up a car, hence a body. You don't just
mm.
need to do one thing and smash the shit out of it because you'll end up with a load of problems that you don't intend for, and it won't be anywhere near as effective.
Indeed, indeed. So it's not just about, pushing test, pushing test, pushing test. Oh, look, now I'm growing nipples. Okay, fine. Well, now we're going to throw in
Oh,
an
it's fine.
AI.
I'll have them cut out. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, no, just don't use an AI. Most of the AIs, you don't actually need to use. You can keep estrogen in through it. You should keep estrogen in, and the utilization of insulin. I'm finding people who are throwing in insulin really quick
Well,
these days.
I've heard of female coaches saying to their girls that insulin should be the first drug they use.
Nah, I mean, what's the but why? It's not particularly an anabolic. It's not an anabolic hormone. Insulin is a storage hormone. It's not an anabolic hormone.
Have you
And
not
if you're
heard
going to
everyone
be
say that insulin
so,
is really anabolic and say it's not? You just don't understand it.
but if you're going to be using a basal insulin for somebody who's literally on 200 grams of carbs,
Oh, you don't.
why?
Not like that's it. That's all it is. Why would you use a basal if you're not? It's just stupid. Fix
It
the
makes
problem.
no sense.
If you've got a problem with your actual blood glucose and you're on low food, then you probably need to one see a doctor more than
Well,
anything.
you've got poor glucose response, it just means that you're insulin resistant, but that doesn't mean that you put insulin in. That's like putting on a band-aid.
Yeah.
It's like when people have, and that's exactly what the medics are actually doing in regards to putting everybody on fucking levothyroxine, which is what we were talking about before, because there's a lot of people
Thyroid
who have
hormones.
obviously these issues. It's just a band-aid. They're not actually getting into the nitty-gritty of why the thyroid is dysfunctional. Whereas when people come to me and they're like, oh, do you know what? My waking body temperature is 35.1. I'm like, fuck, that is cold. So there is something going on. You're running on adrenals. You're not running on your thyroid hormone. So let's have a deep dive into other little things. It's going to be your gut. It's going to be your liver. It's going to be your kidneys. All of these things have to be taken in. And this is the reason why I can fix people, because I always look at the gut, I always look at the liver, and I always look at the kidneys. And don't look at anything else first. What is your body responding to? How can we fix it? Let's have a look at your body temperature. Let's have a look at your pulse rates. That's how we can fix things. Because if your thyroid ain't functioning, nothing else is going to function. If you've got
No.
poor response, something's going on with your liver. Let's fix your liver first.
But this is like when you get guys who go, "Oh, I'm taking 500 milligrams of test, but my testosterone score comes back in natural range." You're there like, "Yeah, you don't just take more testosterone because he's not going to do anything. You've got problems elsewhere, or you just don't handle testosterone well, and you can look to other drugs." But
Mm.
it's one of those. Don't just sit there and be like, "Oh no, but it can't be that. It can't be just the food." Yeah, it
Mm.
can.
It certainly can. I mean, I've seen people who have been running 100 micrograms of T4 in their off seasons, or basically all year round for the last 4 or 5 years, because they're high competitive bodybuilders. And then when they have their blood test, their T4 levels are non-existent. They're low.
And
And
they're
they're like,
like,
how's that the
"What?
case?
I'm
Because
taking
I've
it."
got, yeah. But it's like, well, you're not utilizing the T4 that you're taking in.
Mm.
But that can't
Body
happen.
is
I'm
just
taking a drug. You don't understand the fact that you still have to dismantle it.
yeah.
You still have to actually break it down and metabolize it, because now your liver's fucked. So because your liver's fucked, this is the reason why you're having all of these problems.
Yeah, so even with all the everything else they could take it, the liver is not able to process it, and plus they've likely run a fuckload of orals as well, and you're expecting the rest of your body to function when your liver literally basically cleans everything out, and you've just
Mm,
wiped it out over the
mm,
course of weeks. This is what we see post show as well, which will be interesting this year because I have a feeling that the Super Droll protocol will just be everybody's protocol this year. So the
oh,
number of people you'll probably have or will have come to us going, I'm 3 weeks post show and I'm throwing up black sick. It will
yeah.
be a thing because what you do leading into that show in terms of how much you slam, the post show period is when it comes out. And
Mm,
it's not pretty. And when people are like post show is the hardest part, some people that's just the dieting related thing. Don't have a goal anymore unless it's hard as not to eat that food. Some people have it, they're heinously ill.
mm,
And it's because of what they did leading into said show, of which they may have just won a plastic trophy or a medal. Is it
mm.
really worth it? No, it's definitely not. So all these oral protocols, which do just basically destroy your organs, and they do it rapidly. Um, it's wild.
It is scary. It is scary. But people don't think about that. They don't think about life after bodybuilding. They just
No,
think
because
about here and
bodybuilding
now.
is a zero-sum game for a lot of people. They don't think about the next season, or if they do, they think, I just want to get big after the show. I just want to get big, bruv. And you're there, like,
Mm,
you've already lost the show.
yeah. You've got to think about life out after bodybuilding.
You've got
You
to think
really.
about life in general whilst you are bodybuilding. I say
Mm.
this to people that especially if you're like a PT and a bodybuilder, you need to learn to get away from the fucking gym because
Oh, yeah, definitely.
you'll just burn out.
Most pros hold themselves back. We've had this discussion loads of times, in terms of their off season, because they try and be the pro bodybuilder all year round, and you just can't. You just cannot.
Yeah.
If I wanted to have like 2 meals off plan back to back, I'm gonna fucking have it. Do you know why? Do you know why? Because life's too short not to fucking enjoy a meal out for a birthday or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be stepping on stage anytime soon. If I need to miss a training session because I want to take my kid go-karting or something like that, then do you know what? I'm gonna fucking do that because life is too short to miss
Look at
out on it.
Bronson leading into the Olympia, and he was just there like, yeah, I didn't want to have chicken and rice today, but I wanted to have three cookies, so I took out 2 meals and had three.
Yeah, I mean, why the fuck not? Why the fuck not? Because he wants to enjoy time with his family and he wants to live life a little bit more so. And he went out on a high,
He did.
so I've got a fist bump Chris for that side of things because he has that balance and he does, and in your off season you can have balance. It's when you come into prep, that's when you can be a fucking robot.
I think when people try and be too robotic all the time, what actually happens, especially in their off season, is they get into really bad habits. So like
Yeah.
end of the evening, you're there like, oh well, I've bought some muffins, so I'll just and you do it every day, or like a pack of
Mm,
cookies. You're just there like, oh well, I've got a meal that I need to eat, but I'll just have a pack of cookies, and you do it every day, and then
mm,
suddenly your glucose response goes to shit, and you're
yeah.
distended, and your training starts to get really bad, and it's there like, you've put on a lot of weight very quickly. What the fuck have you been doing? you know,
Yeah.
and they just think up the gear because it will help it. Oh, well,
Yeah,
I'll just take
that's it.
slim when
That's
I have
it.
the
Create
cookies.
more inflammation, creates more inflammation, more systemic fatigue, more liver problems. It's not just a question of, or it's not just, that's not the thing to do. You don't just increase gear. You have to look after the basics first. You do have to sweat the small stuff. And that is the reason as to why bodybuilders who are the elites, they are the best at what they do because they do sweat the small stuff. People
Attention to detail in every aspect. You
yeah,
know,
for sure. People who
just
say, don't sweat the small stuff. Well, actually, I want you to sweat the fucking small stuff. I
yeah.
want you to be able to have your mineral balance absolutely perfect because otherwise you're not going to be able to fill up and you're just going to blow with water. If you don't have that mineral balance complete, what happens if you have striated glutes as a female figure competitor, but you're not going to need a striated glutes from that because you need to have that little softer appearance. Well, okay, it just means that you're too high in sodium. We need to increase your potassium. But how many people know that?
Not many.
Not many.
Just be like,
How many
we need to just fill you. And the problem
And
with it
it's
is
like,
then
no,
you
stop
end up
filling you
bloated because
to
you've already
fill
done a
that.
bit of load. If
That's
you're
it.
if you're peeled and you load, your glute lines will just get even deeper.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's one
They've
of
got
those. You've got to be able to spill a little bit in a different way that doesn't involve the stomach getting bigger or you spilling in the wrong areas.
absolutely. And there is a specific use of specific foods. So the reason why I use orange juice for people first thing in the morning is all down to the aspect of thyroidal health. We've got to be able to kick that thyroid back into check, especially in terms of prep, because we've got to be able to protect your thyroid. It's easily digestible. People look at me and they're like, juice in prep? It's like, yes, yes, juice. And it's very good, please just have it.
Mm.
We don't, but we measure it out and we relate that to your body temperature. And or every single person who I've been, managing body temperatures with throughout prep, I'll never really do your body temperature because I know that you're fine.
I
But
think,
there
look
will
at
be
me.
a point.
My
I know.
face is disappearing. I think my thyroid works just fine.
But there will be a point where I will say to you, okay, right now we're going to start looking at your body temperatures. We're going to
Yeah.
start monitoring this a little bit closer, that a little bit closer, because I will sweat the small stuff. And it does make a massive fucking difference.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so if you want to be elite, you do have to sweat the small stuff. You don't just have to look at the big kind of macro bits. You've
If
got
you
to
want
look
to
at
be very good at anything, the bang for buck approach is fucking useless.
yeah, yeah. You've got to
And
be able to.
people are like, oh, I just do bang for buck exercises. Okay, have fun having a really detailless, fucking blocky physique.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Shame.
just thinking about your macros and nothing else. Or, or getting it in as easy as you can. Have fun with the ulcerative colitis you'll have in the next 10 years.
Oh yes, beautiful. You see,
Mhm. But this is
indeed.
the thing as well, relating it back to the ultra processed food. One in two people get cancer these days. Where do you
Mm,
think that's coming from? And it's not from, and this is the thing is they sell you the food, they sell you the food, and then they sell you the cure later on. The cure.
yeah.
It all relates, and all this stuff causes inflammatory problems, which, funnily enough, the majority of cancers come from inflammatory problems.
Yes, they do. They do.
So,
So I think that wrapped it up very nicely, don't
yeah,
you?
you're getting cancer. Yeah.
Yes, you're getting cancer. Stop eating like a dick.
Please.
Hey, doodle. Right, so as per the usual, if you like it, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we will catch you on the next episode.
See you then. Bye.